Assalamu alaikum. Today I'll talk about how we derive insights. So most of the TED Talks that all of you listen to tend to have this unique insight that challenges the hypothesis or the status quo. So what I will discuss with you guys today is generally how we arrive at those insights, what you can do to get to those insights. We'll discuss ride-hailing apps, we'll discuss a little bit about movies, we'll talk about technology adoption, and we'll talk about the literacy rate. So, most of us here might have used ride-hailing apps. You know, you want to go somewhere, you call a cab, you give your location, you get into the cab, the driver takes you wherever it is. And most of the times, as soon as the ride ends, the driver will be like, kindly do give me 5 stars. And you'd be like, yeah, sure, whatever. But have you ever thought about the fact, why do you give 5 stars? So if you think about it, the rating scale is devised for you to actually give a rating based on the performance of the driver, right? Most of the times, the driver picks you up, drops you off, you might converse with him. It's an average job. He just drops you off. And then there's the good rating, which you would, sort of give if the person goes out of your way a little bit. But the 5-star rating, the idea behind it is the driver was outstanding and goes really out of his way to do something. Yet, for most average rides, we tend to just give the person 5 stars. And most of the time, it's because of the fact that the driver says so. Why is it that we're so obliging, right? What happens is that when Pakistanis tend to use any form of a scale, we automatically contextualize it. So let's think about it. We know that the rating scale is supposed to be, it has specific definitions. But yet, for us, whenever we look at the ride-hailing app, 4.5 stars, you usually know that's not the best of ratings, right? Similarly, if you think about it, it's when the rating goes up to 4.8, 4.7, that's when you think the driver is pretty good. But no one's ever told this to you before. You automatically make sense of it. Just think about it for a second. 90% of the scale is irrelevant. We don't usually see scores below 4.5. We usually tend to see scores above them. So before you guys think I'm making all of this up, there is this thing called the cultural bias. If you see, this is a study done by Ipsos. It's a market research agency. If you think about it, Mexico, right? These are so basically T3B's top 3 box. What it means is that you're either satisfied, very satisfied, just satisfied, or neither satisfied nor dissatisfied. So 90% of the people in Mexico apparently are satisfied with their vehicles. But when you think about a manufacturing giant like Japan, 40% of the people are unhappy with their vehicles. Is that the case? So does the Corolla work better in Mexico than it does in Japan? That's not the case. It's just that culturally, South Americans and South Asians, we are very obliging. We tend to give high ratings because of our emotional quotient. Similarly, a rating of 6 in Japan is 6 out of 10 is considered to be a very high score, as opposed to in Pakistan, 6 out of 10 is considered to be an average score. So there's a cultural difference there. There is no better example of that than the movies. So I've got here an Oscar-winning movie, Spotlight. There's an infamous Hindi comedy, Hera Pheri, and then there's War, the Pakistani movie that was released in 2013. What do these movies have in common across them? They have the same IMDb rating of 8.1. So the important point over here isn't that whether it's wrong or right, it's that all of you sitting over here tend to contextualize these numbers based on your experiences. For someone over here, maybe Hera Pheri deserves an 8.1. For someone, it might even deserve a 9 out of 10. But for other people, they might be wondering, how can you even compare a comedy with a serious movie like Spotlight? That, once again, that's not the point. The point over here is that based on our experiences, we subconsciously contextualize data. No one has ever come to you and told you that, hey, you know what, 4.5 stars, that's not a good rating. Although out of 5, it's 90%. But 4.5 is an average score at best. So now that we know that we can contextualize data on our own based on experience, let's just have a look at a few figures and how we can contextualize that. Yes, so this is 50%, right? I do apologize, my talk is a bit intensive on the technical side. We know that 50% mathematically can be represented as 0.5 in decimal, in fractions. Similarly, 50% is also 1 out of 2, heads or tails. It's a simple, 50-50, chance. Or out of 100 students who took calculus, 50 got an A grade. Please do bear with me. I understand that's a very, long shot over here. In GIK, taking calculus is equivalent to getting into the boxing ring, and often getting knocked out as well. And similarly, it could also mean that 1,054,000 children out of 2,109,000 children are under the age of 10. The thing over here is that all of these, the different numbers, the different stories leading up to the same conclusion, 50%. But you know right now that once you set the context, you understand what that 50% stands for. Yes. So basically a percentage, right, how it works is this. It's basically a numerator divided by a denominator, two numbers, right? And we know, for instance, in the case of the calculus, that it wouldn't make sense if we divided the number of students in GIK who got an A grade by the number of students who took calculus in NUST. So, we understand that whenever we're using a percentage, there's a context behind it. That there is some story, there is some sense behind it. And you automatically can sometimes detect that the numbers aren't making sense. So it's important to keep in mind that sometimes there are these external factors, these variables, that you just do not see at that point in time that affect numbers. In the case of ratings, for example, you understand that below 4.5 is not good. Or in the case of movie ratings, where a certain movie getting an 8 is not necessarily as good as the other movie that's gotten an 8 as well. So let's, coming on to a more complex example in this case. If you think about it, these numbers, I've taken them from the Pakistan Telecom Authority, since I work in telecom. And what it says is fairly straightforward. It simply says that there are, 153 million subscribers in the nation and 63 million internet subscribers, right? And if you divide them by the population, which is 208 million, you come up with these figures. But this is where it gets so tricky and where it gets so complicated. Nowhere on the website does it state what a subscriber is. Now, just think about it for a second. Most of the telecoms, they give their active subscribers basis with PTA. What if I am someone who uses two companies' SIMs? I use Uphone and I use Jazz. Some of you here might use some other brands. Am I counted twice? Does this mean the number is correct? Does it actually give you a true picture of what is going on up here? Maybe, maybe not. So, if you do some research, dig it up a little bit, you'll find out that, in terms of unique users, we just have 82 million of them. Do keep in mind the source is GSMA. It's a global organization that tracks mobile data. And similarly, the Internet Telecommunication Union is a subset of the UNO that tracks internet users. So, just think, if you look at this, 82 million unique users, which is roughly half of what PTA communicates to you guys. So the point over here is that at times, if you don't think about it, or if you don't keep the context in mind, the data can be very, very misleading, which is the case over here as well. If I were to calculate teledensity, right, I would also keep in mind the denominator. It's not fair to divide the entire subscriber base by the entire population. Why? Because Pakistan has a huge youth bulge. Babies and 3-year-olds, counting them in would be unfair. If you were to look at it smartly, if you were to look at it in a more accurate manner, I would divide it by the population aged above 15. Now, this is a judgment call. I'm simply using an industry standard, but just to give you a good barometer, a good estimate of what the actual penetration might be in a country, I would use the adult population and arrive with these figures. So, in my opinion, humble opinion, this is not once again anything concrete or anything, for sure short, but 65% of the adult population has a telephone is a much accurate way of going about it than just simply saying 150, perhaps potentially SIMs divided by the entire population. So I would, the thing behind this is that, once you in the age of social media, there are so many numbers being bombarded at you all the time. The idea is to keep in mind, what's going on and what is the number actually telling you. I understand, since numbers form the basis of any hypothesis, it's very critical to know that what the number is actually saying. At times, you can twist it. In this case, just the word subscriber throws you off entirely and gives you a very wrong picture. So the next example was the literacy rate. According to the Pakistan Economic Survey, there's a 49% literacy rate in the rural areas of the country. Just to be clear, unfortunately, we haven't had a survey for literacy since 2015-2016, according to the Pakistan Economic Survey. But based on the previous example, where we discovered that the subscriber term is very complicated and not very clear, is this the right way to go about it? So Alif Elan, a very famous NGO that worked on education, they also admit that although the Pakistan Economic Survey is the biggest source of data that we have for these metrics, it does not have important indicators such as enrollment or quality of education. The reason why I'm talking about this is that, even if we have a 90% literacy rate, what's the point if our students are not aware of how to do certain things? So this is the case with this. This is the annual status of education report. They conducted surveys in 146 districts. They talked about the enrollment rates. The enrollment rates are 81%. You can see the splits in the slide as well. And the key insight over here is that out of those 81%, only 50% can do two-digit division. They don't know basic math. Similarly, only 49% can read English sentences. So you come back to the whole idea once again. Is the literacy rate defined by the Pakistan Economic Survey? Does it give you a smart way of looking at things? Yeah, sure. If you go by the literate definition of it, that it defines, that you can read English or, read Urdu, sure. But it doesn't give you a smart idea of what is actually going on ground. What is this true reality, the true picture of things? So I ask, is this a better way of measuring literacy? No, there are multiple ways of doing so. But this is just one approach that, I thought of that, hey, maybe this is a better way to go about it. So as I mentioned earlier, this is how fake news. Actually, fake news is not fake news, it's misleading news. You can twist a number, you can turn a number, change the base a little bit, or not define the numerator as discussed previously, and then you can mislead people. If you look at all of these metrics that the International Federation of Library Associations has given us, you'll realize it boils down to a very simple factor. It's the 5 Ws. So consider the source, check the author, who is it? Check the date, when was the story said? Read beyond, look for the why, what's going on, and where it happened. So the 5 Ws are basically the standard that journalists use when they're defining any stories. And in this case, it's the same over here as well. Whenever you see a statement on Facebook, whenever you see any number, just ask yourself these 5 questions. The idea is the same. Now that we've discussed the 3 factors, yes. So now that we've discussed the 3 factors, the first thing you look at is the numerator, the denominator. Basically, who is it that we're targeting? Are the bases that we're targeting, is that accurate? Does that make sense? As we discussed, 50 students who got an A grade in GIK cannot be compared with the 100 students who took the calculus course in NUST, for example. And then apply the 5 Ws, just see what they're talking about, what is the number, and then I hope that you guys can come to insights on your own, hopefully. Although it requires painstaking research, there's no doubt about that, but I hope you guys can arrive to some sort of conclusions on your own that are actually accurate and insightful. Thank you.